even if it's just a nanosecond of the day, a love vibration is far, far, far more powerful than a fear vibration.
Exploring the human journey.
Hi and welcome. Thanks for joining us. Gail and I got to attend the Los Angeles Conscious Life Expo, and while we were here, we got to meet an amazing individual, Rob Moses. He is a movement alchemist, and I cannot wait for all of the fun stuff that we're going to get into. Rob, thanks for being here.
Oh my gosh, what an honor and privilege. Thank you. Yeah.
What is a movement alchemist?
Well, I started out as a kung fu, fanatic as a kid,
When did you get into that? I mean, what age was that?
Well, that's kind of part of a life story.
Yeah.
I was actually into it even before I was into it. As a very small kid, I would always pick that I had to be Kato with my cousins, and then the grandma would put on the superhero capes. Yeah. And
for those of the generation that didn't see black and white TV, give presents to Kato.
Okay, Kato was Bruce Lee. Long before I knew it was Bruce Lee. But you know how we are when we're kids. We got to be superheroes, man. Yeah. Even to this day. Come on.
What's your superpower? You got to wear a mask and everything.
No, he did. But all we needed was a towel.
Of course.
Yeah. And as soon as that towel was on, it was real. And I mentioned this in a documentary that I've done recently. And people seem to get a kick out of that, pun intended. Oh, yeah. So we'll start with that. So when I was just, kindergarten-ish, or even before that, as soon as that cape was on, I'd say Kato fast, and then I could kick my cousins in the head.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd get in trouble for, what are you doing? And it's like, okay, I got to do this. That's how I roll.
That's right.
Yeah. And, then when the Kung Fu series came out, I was mid school, right before high school, and I was just fixed to the TV. That was the only night of the week my parents knew where I was. I was sitting there cooperating, watching Kung Fu, the original series.
Yeah.
And I was just mesmerized, fantasized. It's just like, oh my God, I just could not get enough of it. Yeah. I was like a sponge. And so shortly after high school, I had started garage boxing with some friends, and we were going to get into the, you're an angry youth. You know how it works,
Yeah,
you're sort of looking for trouble when you're at that certain age. That's why how they brainwash you and send you to the military, right? Instead, they put me to work. I wanted to, being a welder and so forth. And I got talking to one of my buddies, and I was going to get into kickboxing, and he tells me, dude, I just checked out. It's Kung Fu school. So really? What? He goes, yeah, this is like the guy that used to run the Kung Fu series. It was Cam Ewan, and he had a school over in Torrance, where I lived in, the south of Los Angeles, LA area, Southern California. And so, by chance, I wind up going and looking at that, and it just felt right. And already being fanatical about the old series, by that time there was mostly reruns coming along and stuff, and I was still stuck constantly. And lo and behold, that's where I signed up. I was already hitting bags. I was already kind of boxing with my, my buddies. Village idiot, town drunk.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
you're young, and strong, ox. Yeah, smart as an ox.
Yeah. Strong as an ox and twice as smart.
Yeah.
But it wound up leading to a few years later, I was kind of part of the woodwork. And I was just fanatical. I'd work building chain link fences in the days, and then I'd go to the Kung Fu school, and they'd have to kick me out at the end of the day. And it became the love of my life, where it just felt like the only way I'd ever really been able to express myself. I'd never been the guy who'd hit the ball over the fence, and I was always kind of shy. And I found a way where dancing in public was my biggest fear.
Oh yeah.
And finally, I found a way where it wasn't easy at first, but I did stick with it because I was brainwashed from watching that show.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, you had the vision in front of you.
Well, they kick the kid out. Thank you for coming. Please go home. And he's, an old Lee Kwai Chang is sitting there in the rain, And so I actually believed in that sort of mentality. And for me, it worked. So a few years later, I wound up being lucky enough to work with David Carradine. And that was really a lot of magic. Most of the greatest chapters of my life were thanks to him. We wound up becoming family.
Yeah.
I'm godfather to his youngest daughter's kids.
Oh, that's cool.
And but there's so many layers I'd love to talk about. But that's kind of like
Yeah.
so the seeds got planted.
With Carradine, were you doing mentorship for the training? Were you friends? Were you working on a project? What was that?
Well, I started with him. I showed up, kind of what? Trying to be a pro, and just taking him through routines. And to prepare him for Lone Wolf McQuade. And I was with Chuck Norris. And David hadn't trained for a while. He wanted to get ready for that. And so Cam Ewan, he and I had the same Kung Fu teacher, said, I think you should go. You guys both, neither one of you wear shoes. He goes, I just got a hunch. You guys are going to get along pretty good. And so it was slow sort of formulating that I just show up and try to be a pro and then get out of there. And then a few years later, when there was an opportunity for Kung Fu Legend Continues, I'm doing a lot of fast forwarding here, but nevertheless, hey Rob, how do you feel? You still doing the Kung Fu? Yeah, I'm doing that. Well, let's go to Canada. The series is coming up. And there'd already been a couple of potential times when that was supposed to happen. And so you get, okay, you get that
industry.
You get, really, And finally, okay, it started to happen. And it was at that time when suddenly we started looking after each other. And I started coming on my way home from work as opposed to being paid. We just started to develop a friendship of trust. And once we got up into Toronto, we were there 4 years. And during that time, it really became more of a family thing. And I was able to realize that David had special needs. So he would ask the most brilliant questions to me that a typical martial artist wouldn't ask. And when you start teaching, you learn more from your students. You think you know something until you get asked these profound and wonderful questions. Kids are the best at it. And you really got to dig. And so I did. And I wound up formulating different approaches to movement where it wasn't the cut and paste formats. And it was sort of like, well, which way's the wind blowing? Yeah, okay, well, we better go over there. It was just a little different. And I had already been inventing. I already was kind of like an odd duck at the school where I was blending, mixing, and matching things. Well, if this works like this, well, then I can do it tiny, and then I can do it big, and I can do it left-handed, and I can do it upside down, backwards. And I was one of those who couldn't sit still with the information and kept building upon it until you kind of become a fully developed character. You start to just, you start with the art painting by the numbers, and next thing you know, it speaks to you.
Well, you got to know how to paint inside the lines, so then you can paint outside the lines.
You learn the alphabet, and then you structure a sentence. Before you know it, you could be a poet, or a screenwriter, or whatever it is. You get to start making it up. And that's not necessarily traditional, but with David's wonderful needs and the fact that he had played, not a real character, but Kwai Chang Caine, I've really felt the need for culturing peace. And he was so brilliant telling me, Rob, I need to be the eye of the storm. I don't have the skills of Bruce Lee. I don't have the skills of Chuck Norris. But if you can tell me the truth, I'll adjust my eyebrow. And everyone will know that character is resonating with at a higher frequency with the truth. And he had a certain take on a holy man. He just played it.
He did, he embodied that.
He nailed it. And then he'd laugh later. He goes, it's because I was on acid. Or I was because, unembarrassable. He was so much fun.
So good.
But he would never shy away from any form of truth. He would tell you. And through the years, we were able to reconfigure a lot of it, and we just really started to really enjoy time together. And I'll tell you, he was the world's last beatnik. One of my favorite people in the world. But you had to earn that with David. You don't just, hey, how you doing? He was honoring.
He was deep.
And he was very, very being.
Yeah.
You know, he's like a Renaissance man. He's a sculptor, musician, and he could hang with royals or bikers or Indians or transvestites. It wouldn't matter who he was with. He had the ability to make people comfortable in his presence or not.
Yeah.
But you'd get David. And that was a unique thing. If you want him to be something else, you'd have to pay him for it. And then...
then it was acting.
Yeah.
Yeah, then it was acting. And he could have held candle with Connery or Newman or any of those guys. He had the chops. And later on, he even got kind of frustrated that, why did I get typecasted as this? So, Rob, you need to help me. So we had a sort of a funny thing. We were almost like the Wright brothers. He'd ask a question, I'd think about it, draw it up, try to manifest it, jump off the cliff, come back. Not a good idea.
Didn't work.
Yeah, or else, you know,
This one will fly.
Yeah, I'll bust it up, right? We can make this work. It's got a few hitches in it.
Yeah.
But I started developing concepts that through the years, eventually I was able to manifest.
Were you doing internal energy work at the time, showing him how to do that? Was he incorporating that? How did that work?
You know, a lot of that's part of the tradition, and so you want to find your grounding.
Yeah.
You want to remember to breathe. You want to try to convey that, especially with him being an elder at the time. You know, he wanted to reveal a certain form of mastership, and I think the physics of saying "Eye of the storm" is "Eye of God." You know, I mean, you can have velocity all around you with per Fibonacci sequence, and per the numbers, those are frequencies, and that stillness is part of the velocities. So I wouldn't have learned or experienced any movement at that level if we didn't ditch the fighting and start really finding a groove. And Dave was so instrumental to me that way. And we know one hand washes the other. As years went on, you know, we would just enjoy time together. Come over, I want to work out today. Oh, we'll grab the guitar, let's have coffee. Some of the funnest kung fu I've ever done in my life was he'd play the piano. And I'd grab my what I call PhysioStix, my divine code apparatuses, and just take off like Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And he'd make a note, and I'd go flying with it, and that would feed him a note, and we did this amazing manifestations of just shifting with energy.
Co-creating that.
Yeah, finding the muse and creating the music, which wasn't the cut and paste format stuff. But it was as honest could be.
That's beautiful. So you started creating your stick, this.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us how this came into existence.
It's kind of drawn right out of the ethers. But it started with me being inquisitive and going down to, at the time, back then I lived in Ventura. And one of my favorite, didn't know many people there in that town. Mike Vidrell was there, who was Brandon Lee's teacher, and I met him on the original Kung Fu the Movie. That was supposed to be a series. Didn't see him again for a dozen years or so until we did Kung Fu Legend Continues. But Mike was like a Kung Fu genie. He really was magical. And one of the reasons I was, around, it wound up after layer. I can't even put it all together how it happened. I can't put the strings together.
We need to know the detail of
I want to know the
everything.
details. Went on last day and so. Nevertheless, I'd already started experimenting, and I would take a bag of my tools of the trade, my double swords, my 3-sectional staff, in a like a duffel bag sort of deal. I'd go down to the beach. And Ventura's beautiful. There's a river mouth there between Oxnard and Ventura. And you go out there and it feels holy. You could just sense that it was native burial ground. There was, when a river meets the sea, you can be in two places at once. Like if you're on a train track, you can actually exist in several cities. If you've got a child like mine and you allow yourself to be multidimensional, that was one such place that really brought out that magic. And when I take my weapons with me, people would go, "Come on, Johnny, let's go. There's a crazy man over there." And no matter how nice you were trying to be.
Yeah.
It's just would have that.
It's a little intimidating.
It's Marshall. You know,
Yeah.
it puts a stop to things, right? And after a big rain one time, the beach was just covered with driftwood and sticks and roots and all this stuff had just washed down. And I started like, we'll just go ahead and say it, like hearing voices. Now, you don't hear a voice, but just like, wait a second.
So things started dropping in.
Yeah.
The intuitive stuff started
You're
showing
getting the
up.
hits.
And it was like, pick me, pick me. Huh? What? And I started picking up different pieces of roots and branches and strange things. And I'd pick some of them up. And if they have a certain bent end on it or something, I would, almost like a spear that had a hitch to its get along. And I'd start following that in ways. And it would create like a dragon-esque sensation or a serpentine curve that you wouldn't have found in the traditional vocabulary of martial physics. I tell you, I'm onto something. And as the plot thickened, I started finding I'm going to keep this one. And after a couple of years of that, I could sense I'm really onto something here. And I just had to trust my instincts and came up with a couple of formulas. And I didn't know anything about sacred geometry. I had seen pictures of the Fibonacci sequence. And so I thought, I kind of recognized that. So I started picking up and listening to, with my full body mind, some of these different shapes. And the certain ones would not allow hostility. So you pick up one thing, a caveman would want to clunk something with this.
Yeah.
But when you pick up something, you become inquisitive. It was high resonance.
Yeah.
And you could suddenly culture kindness. And working with Kwai Chang Caine, even though that was a fictitious character, that was the essence I loved. I was always really taken by the Billy Jack or the John Waynes and some of the characters that seemed Superman, you know what I mean? He was for the good. And I always dug that. And it's a risk of sounding corny. Why not? So, and I'm doing a lot of hiccups and skips at the same time we're making a short story long. So we'll just have fun talking. We talk story, right? Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
It's a story.
Yeah. After a while, I started to recognize or recognize. I'm re-gearing myself to be able to see and witness what would be more fascinating and less hostility would show up. And it became like church for me. That's
so
where
good.
I would go to
connect with the divine.
To connect with the divine, and find that inner voice.
Yeah.
That says it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And anytime I'd go back, after these discoveries, when I go back to try to fight with my friends, or even the imagery you have in a martial mindset, you're putting a stop to stuff.
Yeah.
And I started realizing, wait a second, there's a ditch to this. This ain't going,
Yeah.
And I started to play in high winds with alternative shaped sticks. And I started to be able to incorporate that even with body surfing or the body boarding and the things that I would do. Go to California, you grow up in the water. And I could now, instead of right? I'm trying to look silly here.
Yeah, I get that.
Right? So instead,
He's a kung fu master.
I don't even know what it means anymore.
So
I just want to, I just want to fit in. I want to culture kindness.
Yeah.
And this, these shapes allowed me to, hey, that looks like a wing. Oh, there goes a pelican. And I could go adrift. Oh, wow, there's a wave breaking. And I could tumble across. And oh my gosh, there's someone surfing. And I could start to catch and move accordingly. I could mimic the
Nature.
nature. So it became almost like this biogalactic feedback on whatever you'd see. I could start to move with that. And the late, great, Michael Vendrell was also very instrumental with that. I had the most funnest, fabulous friends. And I'm even looking forward to transitioning because I can go play with my friends again.
Right.
You know, it just feels like that. Like
say,
there's
what took you so long?
It's got that thing, like we're still a work in progress.
Yeah.
And I can feel in the ethers those the signs, you know, the feathers, if you will, or the gentle winds, or the.
Well, we'll see synchronicities. We even coming to LA, we saw so many repeating numbers. So I love those little signs the universe gives you, the feather, the
It's
number.
a hoot. And you gotta awareness is kind of how you pick up on that.
Yeah. Once you start opening your eyes and looking for it, you'll see the signs are all around.
Yeah.
When it's your heart math, then it will start to reveal itself in the most wonderful ways. And also the fact that I have this wonderful daughter. I want to be a single dad, and never quite got over that. The feeling like a failure as a marriage. But you never know where life's going to take you. But as a martial artist, I'm just doing construction. You can't just show up and, Mr. Iron Worker, we're going to, nothing good's going to happen. And I had to be more responsible. I got to get home. I got to put a roast on the table. And love my daughter. You love your kids more than you love yourself. There's a certain time where you can't just have pride or ego be your the reason for the behaviors that you may get drawn into or we're almost like spaceships as we're on our journey, which is what I love about what you guys are doing. Suddenly you have to be a vessel eventually of servitude, but you don't want to just keep bumping into things. And the martial arts is like crash car derby. I'll just get a bigger, faster car, and I'll just smack through, and you'll never be this. And your ego takes off. And then if you take that further, well, what about aerodynamics? What about aquadynamics? Suddenly, you don't want to bump into something. It'll create drag. And then that drag will sort of bring you down.
Yeah.
Simple enough.
I feel like that martial art energy could be an ego construct, but I have seen the masters who go, when you let go of the ego and you start to channel the energy, that's the difference. That's when it becomes a practice.
Well, I needed the universal evidence, and that's, I think, why these different shaped sticks started to talk to me, where I was able to start to realize and gear into nature. And that's what the martial arts stems from. It's actually a love frequency, but then it's like, okay, well, like the samurai is going to take somebody out in order for, let's lop that little wart off, and that way it's better for the community.
Let's prune the tree.
Let's go prune the tree. Okay, we'll risk it for the greater good of the universe. But since there's gunpowder, who knows, right? I don't want to get into too much of that. I was almost delivered into a new way to think and feel and express my art where I didn't have to go through the same formats that I was taught. All of a sudden I became just like a Jonathan Livingston, and there's certain times now where I'll even just let go, let God, and you feel like you're even a merman soaring through the cosmos. And that sort of navigational skill, it's not going to happen if you're smacking something or trying to be something better, or as soon as it's a fear base, you miss out.
Boom.
I like that.
Yeah.
So then you found the different shapes.
Yeah.
And you found that this
is a golden sector out of a Fibonacci spiral. I don't want to sound complicated, but if you see a nautilus shell, this is actually like one of the ribs.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it works as a causeway.
Oh my.
Where things spin. Nassim Haramein, one of the most brilliant humans on the planet. We did a talk last night, and I was seeing Kung Fu while he's talking about, photons and protons and how energy waves work. So these are energy waves that we have potential to, but without the evidence, I fall off. And this is a tracking system. We're almost like, well, you go surfing, but you need the board. So through this evidence, now I can channel information and move around.
You need to get your own.
Let me pick one of these up.
This is actually his. Here.
Yeah, well, okay.
No, you need your own.
No, I have mine right here.
There you go.
Oh, okay. I was going to pull a wrapper off so it doesn't crinkle and make a bunch of noise.
Well, Gail loves Qigong and energy.
For some reason, this simple thing, it's even shaped like a man's rib. Okay? It's like a spiritual appendage. You can do a Ganesh thing where suddenly you have weight distribution.
Yeah, I know.
And you're calling in ascension energy.
So you just roll with it.
You roll, it spins in all ways.
Okay.
And once it starts spinning, it starts traveling. And now you start threading through waves, and your body will awaken until your full body mind allows it to just woo. And then these different ways you energy out or bringing them back. Take it. Now, if I was trying to use this as a martial art, bang!
Yeah.
I can feel a shock wave in my system, which is a fracturing halt for the energy field. And this thoroughfare, or this corridor, the way tides would fold, how water would move through drains, how your toroidal field works. It's really just about pouring soup. You know, like as if with the ethers themselves were the God soup. You swim in that information, and this allows you to thicken that and carve through space where you just don't go, fa, 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 fa. It lends itself to the way your bones are all within divine proportion. So that awakens these different 1.618. The Phi code.
So good.
So this is a Phi code wave. And
like you can feel the energy moving.
And when you stand up, you almost want to do it like you're on a small boat. And your whole body will feel like that. And I can now just take off like, wow, wow, woo, 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 woo. And I don't even think of it, but I let go. It's funny, it doesn't really exist. It's not an it, it's an I am. But you need that slight touch to give you the reference of flow.
Causes you to loosen your body, which is kind of what you're trying to get it
You
to
got
do.
it. See, this is a guidance system. So now you're moving like not just putting your window out of a car, it's 50 miles an hour or whatever, but you're standing on the roof of the car. Your whole body's going, like your nose, your toes. You can choose to direct energy in any direction you choose to, whether these be wormholes or vortices. You know, it starts to come alive where, wow, you get to experience your human potential, and you resonate at Amazing Grace 22432. All of a sudden, it's like you change adjusting the radio station, where it's like, and when you take out all the stops of martial physics, ooh, that's what the masters had done. And this is the evidence of that equation, where it's been here long before math. Spirit moves with these same shapes. And when you start referencing it to, may I borrow that other one for one moment? See, for instance, it goes on and on. I'm still learning about stuff, but right there, that's a Christ fish.
There's the Pisces.
And it teaches one hand to communicate with the other. And you're not sure where it's going to go, but you have to kind of just initiate flow and see where it's going to go.
So how long do you do this? Like every day?
It's a moody art. Arts are funny that way. You know, it's kind of like, I don't do this. It's more of a spiritual exercise. Like a lot of folks have always said, well, okay, now we need the one potato, two potato, three, do an isometric and do this. And they want to stop it. And it's moody. You never know when all of a sudden it'll go, hey. And, you know, when we were in Hawaii with Vendrell, there were times we'd even get on magic mushrooms or whatever it was, where it was transcending energies, where you'd get completely out of your mind, but then your full body mind, all of your senses would be more aware.
That's good.
And I was able to burrow through the cosmos at any velocity. Wow, wow. And this string theory is like Einstein's string theory based over the Fibonacci sequence, but it also, this Christfish thing, it travels. You can go down cylinders. So you're mimicking water. And this is a perfect wave. And why would you say it's a perfect wave? Well, because it's a 2-foot stick bent until it's 21 inches of Fibonacci. And for those who are watching who happen to know about the code,
it's so good.
So this is the code. Okay,
Give a little presence to it.
This is the God code.
Yes.
You know, this is the divine code.
Yes.
It's a certain frequency that gets revealed, and it's got all these different names to it because whoever stumbles into it has actually discovered it, and they try to name it. It's like the Tao, the way, the truth, the light.
Yep.
And this is a tangible evidence of that sacred harmonic, that we have potential, but we're working like robots and we're getting pushed on all this fear, and so we're short-circuited. And as an alchemist, I was led, I'm using it as a metaphor, right? Instead of lead turning into gold, it led me, so it leads me into nature's golden spiral, which is a continuum. And that continuum can travel, and it can also roll up. Energy moves in currents. Yeah. Currents become heavier, become more like streams. You know, the amperage, whatever, starts to, the amplitude starts to rise, the heavierness of the, you know, the jolt gets more. But then that becomes eventually rivers that become to the ocean, and then when you eventually get waves. And the highest harmonic potential of movement becomes vortices. So I'm able to travel up or downstream. I will reverse that, almost like you know, a little piece of spaghetti in the toilet. You flip, you wouldn't know, but now, oh my gosh, look what it's doing. Then you can witness it. And this, when you're doing this right, it looks like the rubber pencil trick. And people will say, "What are you doing with that hose?" Hey, you there, put that in that hose. Right? I had some cops once go, "Dude, put that down." "Hey man, what's up?" And then in a few minutes they were laughing. They go, "Dude, you go have fun." Wow. Thank God. You know what I mean? Yeah. Again, what are you doing here in the middle of the night? I said, "Well, I couldn't sleep, man. Oh, my daughter goes to this college over here." "Oh, okay." You know?
You were in the middle of the night with this thing.
Yeah, with one of these, and I'm just walking along thinking of nothing. You know, I'm just kind of on an adventure.
Yeah.
It's a Winnie the Poohism.
Yeah. To you, it was an innocent little thing. To them, they're like, what is this lunatic doing?
Yeah, who's this dude in the dark hat in the middle of the night?
A hose.
Yeah, what do you do? Put down, name, that's what he said. You put down the hose. I was like, okay. And once they said, "Well, what is that? Show us what you're doing." And I did a little brief little thing. And then I'd see them in the neighborhood later, and they go, "Hey, Mo, well, what's up? You know, how's it going, Rob?" You know? And then they took a shine to me.
Oh, yeah.
So by the grace of God, I didn't get a, you know.
Yeah.
But it's a labor of love.
Yeah, so good.
And I do double sticks, and now I'm working with Tesla equations, and I didn't know any of this stuff. And I still talk like a Ninja Turtle. I just make the crap up as I go.
A Ninja Turtle on math?
Well, it's kind of like, dude, cowabunga, check this out, right? And, you know, and it's different. And even David would always just had a certain affection for my lack of big vocabulary.
Good,
Since dude's honest, you know, he's telling the truth.
Tell me about
this. Okay, this is cool. I've done a couple documentaries. I'm really lucky. A few of them haven't out yet. But this particular documentary, okay, some buddies of mine started creating some film work. We've got a few little projects to go. We've got a lot of shenanigans. The Martial Arts History Museum over in Burbank wanted to do a series of different fully developed characters. They're involved in the martial arts. And this buddy of mine who's decided he's kind of the film creator, the director and the producer of it. Well, we're using Rob. Because, well, nobody knows who Rob is. Why would we use him? He goes, "We're using Rob. I get to use who we want to do."
Yeah. And
so he was kind enough to put me in the chute, ready to go, and talk about some of my shenanigans and how they came to be. A little of that stuff, I didn't like the Cato story. There's some of that in here. But they manifested this biography series, and it's still just kind of early works. But I'll tell you what, I'm really humbled. There are some top shelf. Some of my heroes are going to be in there. You know, they'll probably do maybe 10 or a dozen of these. But they put me in early on. So you can order that, through the Martial Arts History Museum in Burbank. And I'm really proud of it. I actually, I make myself laugh. That's got to be worth something, and it keeps me, because of the divine code. You got to giggle.
Yeah.
You got to dare to be silly. And as soon as your ego comes up, shit. Oh, man, I'm shining. Watch me rip it. Oh, shoot, right?
Yeah, look how awesome I am. Yeah.
Every time. Yeah. Every time. I'm really blessed that way, that path.
Yeah.
Once I did this is so funny. I hope I'm not babbling too much. I'm having so much fun. When my daughter was in high school, I got like, hey, have your dad come in. We want to learn some sort of make up some Kung Fu stuff. We want to do an exercise class. We'll pay him for it. So I did. And we came up through I have something called the 9 Psalms, which we call it 9 Palms. That's another long story I won't get into. But it's stuff I formulated for David. Yeah. So to have, well, how do we play this? And he said, it's kind of like the Karate Kid stuff. Okay, well, what's a wheel work like? Let's look at the physics of this. How can we have a gyro balance through that? What about upstream? How would that be? What if you're in a hurricane? And I'm telling him, okay, flings are coming, and he's just like, oh yeah, and he comes running at me like he's the hurricane, like the 3 Little Pigs. He's gonna huff and puff and blow my house down. Dave was so funny that way. He really was a hoot. I can't say enough. Yeah. And he got a bad rap in a lot of stuff, the nature of his death, and he was as human. He had his drinking issues later in life. Yeah. But that guy was a magical soul. And people should really pursue some of this stuff that he's, some of his fabulous caricatures and his wisdoms, some of his interviews. I wish I was a tenth of as articulate as David was. Really, one of my favorite people in the world. Yeah. I'm almost forgetting where I was. I get to talking about Dave, and it's like, and I was the only guy that called him Dave,
9 Palms.
9 Palms. So I conjured up. I was even going to first call it 9 configurations. It's everything that I do is kind of a work in progress. It's the way life should be. Finish one thing and all of a sudden you forget about it. You're on to something else.
That's part of the creative.
Yeah. So I came up with these 9 different concepts that you could think like a little kid and initiate action, and you would use your body, the physical being, the same way that the masters did in the martial arts. I sort of took of all the things that I had witnessed and studied and just been amazed by. Yoshiba, for instance, the founder of Aikido, was one of the most brilliant practitioners ever in existence, an enlightened being, and he taught the art of peace. Well, that was a gnarly old dude. He'd been kicked out like 3 militaries or something. It took a lot for him to become this glow being and actually use mimicking the universe, move like the universe. What does that mean? It's Fibonacci sequence, flower of life patterns, their frequencies. So I started pulling those extractions out, and it's probably lessened me as a martial artist in the sense that I don't care about that stuff anymore. And as soon as I start to try to bring the martial mind into it, I'm all butthurt. I get sad. And then when I'm out in high winds or I'm doing something with this, that's my wow moment. And I just feel like I'm in love. And you feel so alive. In the instant, the nanosecond, your ego comes in, it short circuits. And you become aware of those frequencies, and those sensations start to become part of your essence. And in a place here like this Conscious Life Expo, some of these beautiful talks and some of these incredible souls, oneness. This is what we're starting to embrace now. Yeah. And as we can peel away the fears, we'll arrive at that love. Yeah. What would love do now? And you have to culture that. Yeah. Every moment you've got to say, kindness is your greatest strength. Remember to breathe. You got to cool it. But every time there's a martial thought, I'm going to go out on a limb here and call it a sin to the collective.
Yeah.
Because you're missing the mark. It's not flowing.
Yeah.
It's an agitation.
It's part of that being harmless. And I heard a speaker at the conference say, you don't have to go out and like overtly love people, but you could just be not harmless to them. It's as simple as
not
that.
hard. Yeah.
Well, look at the
Don't
derivative.
hurt
I mean, the
people.
harmony. And this is golden harmony.
Mm.
Highest harmonic potential of movement arrives in nature's golden spiral.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start embracing certain other things that I make, Vesica Pisces, or just simpler arcs, I don't want to get into all of my, I'm going to try to keep it super simple. But the different ways I apply myself to shapes and move, really, it kind of all comes down to the spiral. Even if it's a steady arc, like a flower of life pattern, a Vesica Pisces means fish bladder. There's an undulation to that. There's something that comes alive. When the different spheres work together, there's a way that energy travels and communicates. How do you spark that interest? And how do you start to live that? And you don't want to bump into things because you're damaging yourself on a cellular level. So to keep our cells celebrating, things start to spin.
Yeah.
And sometimes spinning means burrowing forward, and sometimes spinning means you he's stuck in the toilet because it's funnier to say.
But the spiral
Put a
is
vortex.
That's one of those universal things. I mean, even in hieroglyphics and caveman.
Or
I tell you.
pendulum.
Yeah, you got one right there.
Yeah, that's some organite somebody gave me. Somebody that I know was clearing chemtrails with these things. I didn't see that one coming.
Wow.
And now there's an equestrian company, the Murdoch method. They actually can sell sticks cheaper than me, and we've made a deal. And she hands the sticks to somebody, and grant you, she's a brilliant woman and extremely kind, and you can't help but love her. But she has this communicative ability, and she doesn't get overexcited like I do. You can do this and that and that. She's like, okay, move this way, move that way. And within a minute or two of handing this to someone who's preparing to get onto a horse, she says it's been transformational.
Wow.
Now when they get on a horse, after connecting to this, I'll call it water dynamic, they stir the horse with their knees. They don't yank on the reins. And the horse is calmer, and the people become one with the horse almost instantaneously.
Well, it feels like you're
wow.
you're connecting in with the energy that's there. It's like you're moving with everything instead of against it.
It's omnipresent.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody's ever thought about let's create that wave. Let's communicate. And this, for me, is, like I say, the evidence where I can now have the board. Without it, I'm thinking, well, okay, I guess I'm going to go back to the 9 Psalms, where I'm working with vortices and, empty space or spheres or different ways to shape the way energy moves naturally, where you can kind of turn it into a fun adventure. This keeps me amused. And that's it, amused. That's your angelic talking to you. That's spirit guides. That's what makes music. Where's the harmony? And this frequency gives me that playful, childlike, is it innocence or is it absurdity? It's a little of each.
Oh, it's so good.
But it feels healing. And I also have a theory that I haven't yet been able to quantify. And I learned at this Constant Life Expo, you hear these, I'm able to cross-reference it to what these great minds are saying. And if we're like swimming in a, I'll say, pool of God, if we were just stir that soup from our heart, everything gets healed. And these are stir sticks.
I like that.
Conscious stir stick.
Yeah.
I love it.
You find a way. Yeah.
I love it.
Look how playful it
Yeah.
is.
It's good.
It is.
The way you do it is a lot.
You know,
Well, I think he's just
a lot more
practice.
experienced.
well, it is an experiential deal, and I'm used to getting up and moving, and also I've been in running water. Vendrell and I used to go down to Waipio Valley on the Big Island, lived on the Big Island for a few years, and that's one of the places where in running water, if you couldn't stand straight up in the stream, as soon as you tilted, it would take you away. You'd have to lean forward, and it was the same down in the windy side, down south, where we used to play. Whoa. Yeah, you guys completely think I'm nuts if I tell you about some of the experiences down there. But you need
You
to
think
burrow.
we don't think you're nuts already?
Wow. You know what I mean? There's, oh boy, there's some magic in the air.
I don't think you would, yeah. You can say just about anything and we would love it.
Some of the most beautiful things would happen and you would see signs. The land talks to you there on a higher frequency than it even did over in Ventura. That was hearing like voices, it was like sacred burial ground. We would visit. All land is sacred, but there's nothing obstructing that vision.
Yeah, you can get that vibe.
And we would go to a place where, the shoes are off, the wind's blowing 35 miles an hour, the moon is full, and the cigar-shaped clouds are up, and we're just. And Vendrell was different. He'd have a samurai sword. We were all on our own mission. But I could just fly. And so I've used this term in several interviews, but Peter Pan would leave the ship. Or no, Captain Hook would leave the ship and Peter Pan would show up. And this beauty of just pouring every fiber of your being. You start out fighting. And just like I had a time like Sergeant Dane in Forrest Gump, where he was actually fighting God. Come on, put me in or take me out.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
I lived that. And what showed up was this forging, where eventually I could do the absolute most with the absolute least, be the most honest. And when I put it away, I would feel rejuvenated. And searching for truth, I would look and study at different seashell shapes. That's a whole nother episode of finding out about antiplate perversas and the different ways the shells, and some are smooth like nautilus, and then the others are all wowed out. And this would give me that, I could adjust that river, my central nervous system, at the same time wow out. That's not a term. Okay, it will be. Yeah, now it is. Okay, wow out.
You know, wow out.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, could you swerve on? Wow out. I'm telling you.
In that conscious arc of that soul that comes in here to incarnate, to have that experience of not being with the divine, not being with the wholeness of the one, to come in here and be an individuation of the divine, you're having this experience where you are really connecting with energy, which is different than my experience. I was raised in a religious context, and my whole narrative was about getting out of here to get to heaven, to get somewhere else. Now I'm rediscovering the fact that this is that space of joy, that space of bliss. And that energy is the flow. And then I learn about prana and chi, and I learn about the one point, and I learn about that internal divine focus point. And so I'm really fascinated about your take on that energy with that connection with the divine.
Go figure. Yeah. I mean, as a D student, what are you going to do? I'm going to be a welder. And this has come through me. And I've had to kind of like try climb a tree feet first to figure out, what is this damn thing? I ended upside down and backwards, but it showed up. And I loved Kung Fu more than as much as anybody in the world. I don't want to try to compare it to anybody, because this is no longer needing to be competitive. This is an avenue for me to be creative.
Yeah.
And you find that place of stillness within these high velocities. So this is really the physics of the storm, which David asked. And you look at a seashell, and theoretically, X-rays of seashells are extremely high harmonic, amazing things to look at.
Oh.
And you know there's a center straight line, and then you hit these 7 cycles, and then it's... So you're looking, every smaller section is a little higher velocity. And then you put a tornado like that too. It's a little, you know, you see the... That's a vortex, right? Or toroidal field.
Yeah.
But when you look at a seashell, it's like, hey, wow, this thing's having fun here. What's going on?
Yeah.
It wobbles out of bounds, but it gets to come back to that center place. And I feel that's what Yeshiba was doing, where he maintained a center, but whatever was going around him, it would have an effect where, like a phonograph, you throw in a rock on it, everything would fly away. So he had this divine gearing, an elliptical gearing, that his center was adjustable. And he could either, you work with a vacuum or propulsions. Is this too noisy? I got my...
No, it's fine.
I got a cough, and so I'm using it. So just so you guys know, I'm trying to keep from coughing.
Let me get this straight. You're human. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. And for me now, with Aikido, now you need somebody else. Come here, I want to show you. Let me grab you by your ear and see how much that does. Let's twist this. But you can study. It doesn't work. Oh, well, then that would be good martial art. Oh, done about this way. Oh, my God, that would hurt. How do you pitch someone over? How do you find that triangulation? How do you play the chess of jiu-jitsu? How do you work with the boxing things of staying out of the way? And how do you make your shoulders and your hips work together? How does one hand communicate with the other? So I feel very, very, very blessed to discover this modality. And I can now, let's say, thread those waves and come out just swirling, where my body starts to unfold and infold of the fundamentals of Aikido. And also I can see it with the other martial arts. And, you know, gravity is a continuum. But you take a glass of red wine, for instance, and you swirl it, it will defy gravity. So through centrifugal force and free will, never mind even the burrowing all the way to infinity, as soon as I start using centrifugal free will, it rises up. And I can feel that way less. Maybe not on a scale, but I can use the...
You're like less dense.
We're like 75% water or something like that. I mean, we're water beings. And we're etherical. Am I saying that word right?
Yep.
So it's water and electricity. And this now, I could think of a great Leviathan, this whale, and I can carve through space. Ooh, honestly, as opposed to doing Tai Chi. What was that move that came after so-and-so? I'm now... Okay, well, what if I could fly? What if that whale was flying? Oh, and all of a sudden it came into a dolphin. I can sensationalize an honest take on that. What if I had a seal? You pick up this. Allow me to be silly, please. I live in a cartoon universe. Okay.
You've been so serious the whole time. I can't believe you're breaking character.
That's it. Not this time. I'm 86, right? But if you had a seal and you snagged up a seal, that sucker's going to wrestle you and fight with you and go against you, right?
Yeah.
But if you were to break the seal, which is a little bit biblical, right? We don't need to go there. I'm not trying to go there, but okay, let's use the term.
Okay.
But if you were to break it, that would mean like breaking a horse. Where suddenly, okay, come on, seal, I'm going to control you. And he's trying to get you, and you're able to move where his nose would go and feel where his flippers would go, and you can now adjust. Well, then, all right, okay, well, all of a sudden we're friends. Now, you can catch a wave, you can follow him, and you can whoop, and then have that weight coming out here, and then burrow back. Now you're working with weight of the imagination. You make it real outside of yourself. And you don't need a 70-pound seal to do it. All you need is the suggestion, and this will come alive, and it will take you out of balance, and then wow, and you got to use all of your physical being. And this, I feel, is very refreshing, as opposed to now needing an Aikido practitioner. Come here, white belt. I'm going to go, or you there. Or let's practice this technique on one another. When it's live, it's not necessarily a technique. it just kind of tickles, and you kind of sort of just dig it. And it's like I had mentioned Jonathan Livingston Seagull before. There's a certain transformation that starts to show up if you're really willing to fly. And you get that flight of the air, and you get the flight of the depth of the ocean, and our physical being can play in those modalities. And it's not a cut and paste, or it's not a, you want to go get into shape, go play basketball and lift weights, you know? But this is, I'm carving through space, honestly. And if this were to come alive, whether it be an otter or a dragon or a serpent, a water snake traveling, I need to feel all that water in the space around me, even though it isn't there. This is what I feel Nassim was speaking about. This undulating, the pulses, the flower of life, how there's information as a continuum, and we can lend ourselves as if the air is thickened. Well, he's, you know, how brilliant was he? Did you guys get to see him last night?
We've heard. We didn't hear the speech the talk last night. He is smart.
Yeah,
he's so flipping smart. But he's getting funny now. I mean, he was always been kind of funny. Now he's like, man, this guy's got his rap down. This guy's good. But the living collective, I'm not sure you know the right word for it, the ethereal, the substance of space. Whoever thought of that? There is no substance in space. Well, he's proved that there is.
The dark energy, the dark matter, and what's in between that. And super smart.
Amazing.
What message are we resonating to the future, to the babies, to the animals, to the people that we love and care for? This is why Conscious Life Expo shows up. You need to be conscious of it. And even if you're not, or even don't even understand the word conscious, it just raises awareness.
It does.
And you can now, hey, I can swim in that pool, and I can activate my prayers where I was, you know, oh, so-and-so's in, you know, across the country, and they're sick, and you need to pray for them. Well, now you can joyfully make an effort and to kind of decide that your prayers are real. That's what a lot of chi is. And grant you, that's another whole big topic where, I mean, people are, you know, levitating and doing this. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about believing in whatever energy you may be sending. And that's the way I was able to help David. And also his brilliant questions would help me, where it became like we could do whatever we want.
So I'm excited to try this because I could feel just using it just for a moment that difference it could make, the difference in the way my body would move. So I'm excited. How can other people find this tool?
Well, I have them, like I say, I'm going to be honest with this because, you know, I don't want to catch any slack. The Murdoch method, Wendy Murdoch selling them cheaper than I can because she's got a shipping thing, and we've just started. And we're going to get more made with more, what would you call that, bio-friendly plastics and stuff. So I want to kind of pass the ball to her only because she's got a better deal. So I've got them for a little more pricey on goldenspiralwellness.com. And I'm a work in progress. I'm not very tech-tard, I think is what my daughter referred to me as. You know, I'm a writer. It's like, okay, well, give me a pen or a pencil. And everybody else is, you know, doing this stuff, and I need to swim in it. I got to get out there and go. But this is not, like I say, it's not an it, it's an I man. I am. And I've seen people who, when they pay more, they come out crying, and they become more emotional because energy in motion becomes more healing and more honest. And I will never want to hornswoggle anybody. You know, that's none of that. So Wendy's got the best prices at the Murdoch method. I got them announced, and I got to go down to that, wait in line, you know, at the post office and do all of that sort of thing. I got a hunch this thing's going to be bigger than a hula hoop.
That's good. Because
you can now not just deal with infinite, but you can do the finite, you know, where you can work with like bubblature. I love that fun name. Right? We're putting that one in the dictionary. Where you're working with spherical essence, and then you cut across the field and you travel. And then you can send stuff out elliptically and wait for it. And now you become an inelastic behavioral being.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
So you all of a sudden you're a water being, but hey, well, check this out. You got slingshots, rubber bands, vortices, and you're shooting yourself out of a cannon, practically, or just dancing and not. Just emptying it all, erasing the chalkboard where your mind would be trying to calculate. It's when you're not sure. This functions as meditation. And what does that even mean? And it kind of means, where do you find yourself? Where do you lose yourself? But there's no beginning and there's no end. It's that timeless moment when you're just day in life.
Yeah.
And this does that as an activity, where I'll fall asleep.
Yeah,
it's just my nature. I need that. Give me the roller coaster.
The moving meditation. Yeah.
That's so good.
So a lot of people need that.
What is this teaching you about consciousness?
That I'm responsible.
No.
And that energy that's coming off of you, or me, or whatever, I need to recalibrate constantly. And even if it's just a nanosecond of the day, a love vibration is far, far, far more powerful than a fear vibration. Eckhart Tolle talks about this. And I feel that this also, not just water, but it's also an equation for plant growth. This is what will turn us into human flowers. And as this starts to blend vortices forever into the ethers, it's, even though we don't see it as solid, there's a certain wave information. Those will be grand moments that help to bring us as a collective closer to them, closer to true source.
So good.
And just, you feel where it's just embrace that wow. It's like wowism, it's Taoism.
Yeah.
Everyone benefits. Everyone's going to benefit when you're. Well, it's so funny, like that lost in translation, or but it's the sort of.
Yeah.
As you come out of it, you can breathe again, and then you get in the car and you go, and then someone's going, get the heck out of here, and we very quickly trick ourselves up into that negative energy or that short circuit, but without a reference point, you wouldn't know. And there's times I pick this up and think, no wonder I haven't made it yet. This thing is like, I feel like a Goonie bird stuck on a runway, and I just keep crashing my chin on the asphalt. But I know this thing can fly.
Yeah.
I think that's another collective shift, where suddenly people say, well, of course, that'll make sense. And people will see how the physical being will start to carve and unfold and become a generator, if you will, of energy. And it will be divine by the nature of the shapes. And we work with the vacuum and the propulsion and the different ways to shapeshift the clay of the unseen world, the soup of consciousness.
Yeah.
But if you hadn't experienced it, you might not know. And it's sort of like you just went down the hill on the sled, and a little kid, come on, Daddy, pull me again. And you can't wait to go back up.
Right.
To come back down the ski slope or whatever that may be. This is a way where you feel it's like a tracking system. And you can now guide yourself into a momentarily a more playful existence. And those little nanoseconds are far more powerful than the fear-based thoughts that we have, that the media, TV. Is this a war universe? I mean, that was one of Einstein's things. We need to ask ourselves, is this a friendly universe? It may not be. But I think us as human beings, which are human beings, us as light beings in existence, and we're made of water and electricity, and our bones are all shaped through the Fibonacci sequence, it flipping makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
And I'm floored that the universe, I mean, it seems like anybody should have figured this out.
It's like Rob Moses is bringing the math of the universe to consciousness with his green, amazing tool.
Well, I wished I'd have made him turquoise in hindsight, but I hadn't thought of that. You know,
and I think you are also going to be the author of the Wow Day Change.
Okay, you can shut up and grab my pencil again. I got to start jotting stuff down.
The Wow Day Change.
But, you know, love is the answer to all of our questions.
It is.
And we can say that in the Conscious Life Expo. Because, like I say, the second we get in line at the grocery store, wherever it is, we got to remind ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, I've been in martial arts for 40 some odd years. If you weren't ornery, you wouldn't stay with it. But I know better. And that Kwai Ching Caine, the essence of that is something that we still need to keep. The Christ consciousness is there for the crystalline grid. So we're feeding that information, galactic, who knows what. I can't even name it. So I'm not even educated enough to come up with names for it, like Nassim was. But, you know, we're all in the soup together.
Yes.
And we need to, you know, recognize that. And we got to pray for the earth and pray for water. If I tell you this is an equation from water and Ho'oponopono, we need to work with those prayer dynamics because all the water knows what we're doing. And when you can swirl with the sequence, with the God code, momentarily, I feel that it would heal your cells because they're not going, they're suddenly, they're grooving. And they're finding this whirlpool talks to this whirlpool. It's a Holy Communion. It's called, I didn't name this stuff sacred geometry, but you know what? I can feel it. It's sacred. And you don't know where it's going to go. And it may only take 144,000 people at the same time doing it before we just lift off.
There it is.
Or maybe only 7. You don't know. But we need to have some form of activity in order to activate the love before we destroy ourselves.
That's good.
Good.
We thank you so much for having a wonderful conversation here and for sharing your work with the world and just who you are and what you're doing just to be the change that you want to see in the world. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. And, you know, again, I'm a little sheepish about it. When I get done with stuff, I think, God, why didn't I just wait for more questions and see? And I would have had greater things to say.
This is what it's all about, is getting to dive
I get so excited
Great.
about this stuff.
So good.
It was perfect.
As we close today's conversation, if there's one thing you left with the audience, you're like, look, I talked a lot, I said a bunch of stuff, but if there's one thing you take away from today, it's this thing. What would that be for you?
Well, we love and music. I mean, that's kind of where we're going to. I believe it's a Bob Marley quote. But I would like to say kindness is our greatest strength. And we need to culture that. No matter who you are, what you're doing, you don't need one of these for it.
Yeah.
Breathe before you speak. And a love answer will arrive. So keep yourself in check that way.
I love that.
Beautiful. Rob, thanks for being a part of our journey today.
Oh, the fun.
Thanks for joining us here on Exploring the Human Journey. You can find us as a video on YouTube or listen to us as a podcast. You can also join in the conversation by following us on Facebook and Instagram. For more information, go to the website at exploringthehumanjourney.com.